The real meaning of strength, beyond physical power. The strongest person in the room is rarely the one clenching their fists. Sometimes it is the one whose hands are empty, who refuses a victory that would cost them themselves. The barbell makes strength visible. The world claps for what it can see. But there is a different weight no camera can catch, and it presses down in the privacy of a breath held too long. A phone call not avoided. A truth said without armor. Physical power lifts iron. Real strength holds what iron can't. Pain without venom, love without possession, fear without surrender. Imagine the scenes you don't post. A nurse grips the hand of a stranger at 3 a.m., listens to a story that has no good ending, and stays anyway. A father walks down a hallway, rehearsing a sentence that will reshape his child's life. I was wrong. A woman deletes a message she could have sent that would have won the argument, but lost the future. A boy, humiliated in front of his friends, does not humiliate back. None of these movements burn calories in a way your watch can measure. All of them leave fingerprints on who you are becoming. Our myths got confused. We learned to decorate strength with noise, shouting, conquest, uncrying eyes. We worshiped the heavy-footed. We crowned the biggest, the fastest, the undefeated, and ignored the tender arithmetic of a person who chooses restraint over spectacle. We told ourselves that to be strong is to be unbroken. But being unbroken is a kind of petrification. Statues do not feel. The living crack and mend and crack again, and some of the bravest carry gold through their fractures. You can hear the lie humming under the advertisements. No pain, no gain. Tough it out. Never let them see you sweat. Hustle. Dominate. Win. Beneath it runs a quieter sentence, older than gyms and crowds. Persist without hardening. That sentence makes a different shape in the body. It loosens the jaw. It widens the lungs. It lets the eyes grow honest. It has no use for cruelty. It knows that stopping a hand mid-slap takes more command than landing the slap. There's a story we don't tell often enough, because it doesn't glitter. A carpenter in winter keeps a small fire going with the last of his wood, not for himself, but so his neighbor, who is sick, can warm his hands. He could have hoarded the heat. Instead, he shares his own comfort and walks home colder and strangely larger. What muscle is this that grows when you give away its fuel? What muscle is this that learns to burn not for spectacle, but for continuity? The physics of the heart are not the physics of steel, but there are hints if you know where to look. What is strong in nature is rarely the rigid thing. The tree that refuses to bend to the wind breaks. The tree that sways survives storms centuries long. Spider silk is almost unimaginably thin. It's also stronger than steel by weight, not because it is unforgiving, but because it distributes stress with grace. Water carries mountains a pebble at a time. Sandstone outlasts a boast. When we call someone strong, we might mean they can take a blow. Eventually, we learn to reserve that word for someone who can absorb one without passing it along. History quietly revises the word for us. There are conquerors whose statues still tower, whose armies marched, whose empires ate maps. And then there are people whose power worked inward and outward at once. Catalysts who held impossible contradictions without letting go of either. A prisoner who keeps his mind free. A mother who forgives without pretending she wasn't shattered. A teacher who goes back to a school where nothing changes and keeps believing one human can be reached. The record books that love numbers won't write their names large. Strength at that scale is not a spectacle. It is a weather. We inherited a costume from someone who meant well. Be tough, they said. Don't cry, don't need, don't ask. Otherwise the world will eat you. That costume kept you warm the day your parents fought, the week your lover left, the month you couldn't afford to be fragile. It made you sharp. It also made you alone. The stronger you looked, the more hidden you became from yourself. You built a fortress and called it home, and one morning you woke up with walls so thick your own voice came back to you as an echo you didn't recognize. Ask yourself whose definition you are wearing. The person who taught you strength, what were they afraid of? What story did they survive that made tenderness look dangerous? We keep their commandments long after the threats have changed. We pass along toughness the way forests pass along disease, through roots invisibly. We swear to protect our children from harm, and then we raise them in a silence that hurts more than broken bones. Later, we look at our own work and do not remember writing it. Strength, if we are to work with it honestly, cannot mean invulnerable. Invulnerability is a statue's virtue. Strength must mean something alive and stay open to what would close it and refuse to give up its shape. It must mean something like flexibility in the presence of pressure, like continuity in grief, like capacity when capacity has been spent. It must include the ability to apologize without collapsing, to speak without attacking, to wait without freezing, to feel without drowning, to be seen without performing. These are not glamorous. They are sovereign. Notice where your mind runs when you hear the word strong. Does it picture a body, an army, a trophy, or a woman sitting with a friend through a hospital night, a man choosing honesty over admiration, a single parent waking early again, a refugee learning a language that twists the tongue? Most of the world's strength looks like chores. It looks like patience that doesn't post. It looks like refusing to turn bitterness into personality. It looks like a small decision, made daily, to be faithful to something invisible. You might protest, but can't quiet people be cowards? Isn't restraint sometimes simple fear? Yes, we will not romanticize shrinking. We will not baptize avoidance by calling it serenity. There is a fake softness that hides contempt, a polite nonviolence that is just the terror of confrontation wearing pearls. That is not strength. It is retreat. Real strength does not hide in bathrooms when the truth is knocking. It opens the door. It doesn't enjoy the fight, but it doesn't give the floor to the liar. It stands not because it hates, but because it belongs to something that does not depend on applause. So here is the first turn of the key. Strength is not a volume level. It is a direction of fidelity. Not louder, but deeper. Not harder, but truer. Not more force, but finer force. The kind that can move the inner hinge of a life without breaking the door. Think of the hardest thing you've done that nobody saw. Think of the promise you kept when your body asked to quit. Think of the time you chose to remain kind when you had evidence to become mean. That was your strength saying its real name. What if we began to measure ourselves by that quiet scale? What if gym mirrors were replaced by the faces of the people who sleep near us? How would they score the lift of your patience, the endurance of your listening, the velocity of your forgiveness? What if your personal record was a day you did not retaliate? New numbers, new competitions. Not to make a spectacle of decency, but to train a different muscle. The one that will be asked for when the lights go out and the easy definition fails you. The one that turns you from a collection of reflexes into a person. We have to begin somewhere close to the skin. Start with breath. Not the heroic kind you hold. The breath you let go. the exhale you trust. Real strength begins in that letting. It knows the difference between clinging and care, between control and commitment. Real strength looks at what is, not what would be convenient, and says, I will keep showing up to this reality because it is mine, day after day. This is the discipline no applause line can capture. This is the opening move. Now the story will complicate. Now the forces that profit from the old costume will arrive to bargain. Now we will see how much it costs to be strong without armor. The world is not neutral. It rewards a certain mask. It pays a premium on performance and calls it courage. It tapes a grin to your face and says, team player. It takes your capacity for endurance and mortgages it against someone else's deadline. We learn to pass for strong by wearing exhaustion like a medal, by turning our boundaries into a punchline, by confusing numbness with maturity. We learn to keep moving when we should have stopped, and to stop when we should have moved. There is a hallway in most offices where the air smells of coffee and quiet dread. In that hallway, a woman with a calendar obeys three masters: the client, the clock, and the fear she will be seen as weak if she says she can't take one more project. She does it again. The compliment tastes like water when you're already drowning. This is how bright people become shadows of themselves. They are congratulated for strength while they are being consumed for fuel. Meanwhile, the person who learns to say no is called difficult until there is a crisis, and then called indispensable. The market misdiagnoses the medicine. The same misdiagnosis operates in families. The strong one carries the news, arranges the flights, sits with the dying, eats standing up, never asks for help, and volunteers to hold everyone else's unspoken. After the funeral, they fold the chairs and clean the kitchen before anyone can ask whether they are okay. Of course they are okay. They have always been okay. They wear okay like a scar. Their strength is admired and asphyxiated in the same breath. The system needs them to be tireless, so it blesses their collapse as destiny and calls their emptiness selfless. Who will notice this violence done by compliments? There is a swagger that colonizes the word strong. It patrols locker rooms and boardrooms and kitchens. It punishes tears. It despises ambiguity. It worships certainty. It looks like confidence and feeds on fear. It is loud because silence would let truth surface. It is cruel because generosity would reveal the littleness under the costume. Cultures build altars to this swagger. Empires are its extended tantrums. The strongman parade is a theater of brittle men terrified of softness, lashing the world so they don't have to sit with themselves. We clap because the noise distracts us from the cost. Then the noise stops and the cost remains. Beware the story that only celebrates victories. It creates a lineage of liars. The athlete who never admits exhaustion injures quietly until the body rebels in public. The leader who can't say, I'm unsure, becomes a factory of bad decisions. The parent who won't apologize trains a child to confuse domination with love. Behind every refusal to confess a limit, a shame is shivering. Shame is the puppeteer few of us admit we're dancing for. It whispers, be big or you're nothing. Be tough or you won't belong. It is afraid of the room where you say, I don't know. It is allergic to the chair where you say, I need help. We confuse busyness with worth, stoicism with courage, sarcasm with intelligence. We post-grind as if chaining yourself to a wheel were noble because the wheel is shiny. We mistake the ability to endure dysfunction for strength. That mistake is profitable for someone. It just isn't for you. Whole industries teach you how to optimize the prison you built, how to polish your cage, and call it minimalism. Meanwhile, your body writes emails in a language you can't ignore. The headaches that migrate, the shoulder that won't unclench, the throat that tightens when you're about to tell the truth and remembers the old deal. We don't do that here. How do these forces colonize a person? Quietly. You don't wake up and decide to be weak loud. You collect small betrayals of yourself and label them mature choices. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny to keep the table smooth. You multitask your life into a list you don't love, hoping quantity will forgive the absence of quality. You choose a partner who mirrors your mask because authenticity would pull you into a room where the unsaid is waiting patiently with a ledger. When the mask cracks, the world insists you superglue it as quickly as possible. Cry fast, post a moving paragraph, return to the schedule. Do not linger in the pause, because pauses draw out other people's sorrows. Do not say, "I'm not okay," because then someone else might have to admit it too. We collude in keeping the air thin. We call it being strong for the kids. The kids learn to breathe less. You can feel the trap as it tightens. Strength as uncomplaining. Strength as invulnerability. Strength as indifference. Strength as domination. Strength as efficiency. Strength as a performance with lashed muscles and sanded feelings. A smooth surface where no reflection can land. This is the suspense of a life lived without the capacity that will be demanded when the storm arrives. The capacity for presence when control fails. The pressure builds under the floorboards. A comment from a stranger becomes an earthquake because the structure has no give. But unknown forces assemble with the noise. Older knowledge that went underground when louder gods arrived. The Taoist's water, soft and unstoppable. The yogi's breath, disciplined and receptive. The grandmother's stubborn kindness, unadvertised and unshakable. The craftsman's patience with materials that refuse to hurry. The resistor's commitment that survives defeat after elegant defeat. Strength in these traditions is not muscle but relationship. To time, to pain, to purpose, to community, to one's own limits. It is a tensile bond with reality that cannot be bribed. Danger wakes when you try to live this kind of strength in a world arranged against it. People invested in your old mask will feel betrayed. Your sudden no will be called a yes to selfishness. Your first honest tears will be discussed like a scandal or wielded like evidence against you. Your softness will be misread as invitation by the devourers and as revolt by the controllers. You will be told you've changed. You will be told you're overreacting. You will be told you've lost your edge. You will be tempted to believe them because believing them would let you return to the house of convenience. Stay with the discomfort. You are not losing strength. You are losing anesthetic. The pain that returns was never gone. It was numbed. The fear that speaks has stolen your microphone before. You are just listening now. The chaos that visits is the old order complaining. Let it complain. You are re-specifying your muscle. You are trading the ability to carry other people's expectations for hours for the ability to carry your integrity for years. These capacities are built with incompatible repetitions. You cannot train both at once. Consider a soldier who has learned to obey, to shoot, to silence his need. When he comes home, the world is loud with ordinary demands. Tenderness in a kitchen, patience with a child, ambiguity in conversation. The muscles that kept him alive are not the muscles that will keep him married. He is not weak for struggling. He is untrained for this theater. He does not need contempt. He needs instruction in a different strength. How to name a feeling without flinching. How to admit confusion and collaborate. How to concede a point without losing himself. How to sleep when no one is watching the door. The suspense tightens because this is harder than it sounds. To build strength beyond physical power, you must press against invisible resistance. You must do reps no one counts. You must confront a mirror that argues. Every story of growth into a deeper strength contains a scene where the protagonist sits alone and considers going back to a smaller life. The chorus of old loyalties calls from the hallway. The new self has not learned to sing. The unknown is a room without furniture. You stand. You sit. You stand again. This is training. It looks like nothing. It changes everything. The shift comes when you stop asking, "How do I appear strong?" and start asking, "How do I remain whole under pressure?" This changes the material you reach for. Appearances depend on hardness. Wholeness depends on resilience. Hardness resists, 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 and then shatters. Resilience flexes, absorbs, reconfigures, and returns. In engineering, brittle materials store little energy before breaking. Ductile materials deform and hold. In life, brittle people call surrender defeat and explode at small provocations. Ductile souls bend without betrayal. They have trained on a different axis. Nature is the teacher that does not charge. Bones become denser when loaded appropriately. They remodel to meet demand. Remove all load and bones thin. Overload and they fracture. The art of strength is dosage. Trees develop reaction wood on the windward side micro-decisions within cells that accumulate into a trunk prepared for storms. Sailors learn to spill wind from their sails to keep the boat upright. They do not call it quitting when they do so. Stones stand for centuries because the weight pushes them together instead of apart. The shape of their strength is arch, not wall. We mimic these truths when we allow ourselves to feel fully without being carried away, to be moved without being controlled, to allow a pressure to inform us about where we are weak and let it stimulate growth there gradually. Training in the gym prepares a body by applying stress just shy of injury. Training in the soul requires the same calibration. If you don't stretch your courage, it withers. If you tear it every day by theatrical risk, it scars into showmanship. Courage that lasts is layered like muscle. Microscopic tears, sufficient protein, rest. Rest is part of strength. The servant of physical power is effort. The steward of real strength is restoration. Anyone can caffeinate their way into a performance of competence. Few can step away before they break, because stepping away looks like losing in a culture that cannot imagine a victory with a pause in it. Strength beyond the body includes the intelligence of the tide. Withdraw, return. If you cannot leave, you will call collapse fate. If you can, you will call it rhythm and become a human others can trust to be present longer than a season. Consider the moral athlete, the one who trains to do what is right when it costs. Their gym is unglamorous. Opportunities to tell the truth when lying would work. Chances to keep confidences that nobody could check. Moments to protect the absent against the fervor of gossips. Choices to return money accidentally given. The simple refusal to participate in cruelty disguised as humor. Do this daily, and you will become formidable in a way no weight room can replicate. Your integrity will have tensile strength. It will not snap when an empire pulls. Soft virtues are misnamed. Patience, humility, gentleness, and compassion. These are not lack of backbone. They are control of heat. They can hold massive emotional loads without collapsing into rage or retreat. They can delay gratification without worshiping denial. They can choose a long arc over a quick hit. They are not naive. They are old technologies disguised as kindness. Watch someone refuse to humiliate a person who has humiliated them when they could do so cleanly. That is mastery. Watch someone forgive without erasing history. They have trained their memory to do work other than revenge. Sometimes strength is refusal, not the stiff-necked kind that confuses stubbornness with identity, but the clear-eyed no that draws a boundary to preserve what is human. The whistleblower who loses their pension. The doctor who tells a patient what a hospital system would prefer he didn't. The artist who declines a profitable compromise and goes home to a smaller apartment with a larger soul. They are not martyrs for sport. They are guardians of a line beyond which life thins too far to be worth the applause. Their refusal protects our possibility. Sometimes strength is surrender, not the collapse that follows defeat, not the passivity that grows from fear, but the chosen laying down of a weapon because you will not kill what you most want to protect. The parent surrenders their certainty. The leader surrenders the illusion of control. The lover surrenders their image to become available to the person actually in front of them. In martial arts like Aikido, a gentle redirect undoes a force more completely than a block. In river engineering, a channel carved well frees a city from flood. Surrender is not weakness when it serves the continuity of what matters. This is the perspective shift. Strength is not what keeps you from breaking. It is what grows you back better. Kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, is not a metaphor. It is a manual. The repair is not hidden. The fracture is integrated into the identity of the bowl. The gleam is not shame in disguise. It is pride properly proportioned. We do this in our lives when we refuse the lie that a mistake has made us unworthy and choose the discipline that turns regret into wisdom. No search engine can index how much force it takes. One of the oldest teachers of strength is grief. It teaches you the limits of your control and offers you two options: shut down and call it maturity, or remain open and be remade. Remaining open hurts. It changes the shape of your face. It seasons your voice. It rearranges what you value without asking permission. If you stay with grief without turning bitter, your capacity to bear other people's pain grows in a way you would never have chosen. You become strong like a harbor, not because you never know storms, but because you know how to shelter boats smaller than yours. There is evidence, if you need it. The people who move cultures rarely have the biggest bodies. They have attention, discipline, endurance, and a refusal to hate the people they must resist. The civil rights worker walking back into a diner where he has been beaten. The dissident who writes with a stub of pencil and eats what is given and keeps her mind uncolonized. The neighbor who is the first person others call in the middle of the night because he does not panic. These lives are not applause events. They are slow proximities to good. To build what they possess, you practice staying where you want to flee and leaving where you want to cling. You practice telling simple truths earlier in a conversation. You practice letting other people be wrong about you. You practice ending conversations that are actually bait. You practice asking for help in low-stakes situations so your mouth knows how to form the words before a crisis. You practice naming what you feel without delivering it like a weapon. Muscles learn through repetition. Souls do too. There will be people who call this softness. Smile kindly. Invite them to a different contest. Who can stay curious at an argument longer? Who can hold silence without making it a punishment? Who can listen to a child without consulting their phone? Who can tolerate not being the hero? Who can lose without dissolving? Who can say, I was wrong, with less delay? To win here is to lose the need to perform. To win here is to become the kind of person who walks into rooms and lowers the temperature without taking anything from anyone. That is strength the old myths forgot to mention. It sounds noble until you are alone in your kitchen with last night's dishes and today's disappointments. This is where theories about strength sit down in a chair and try to drink a glass of water without shaking. Think of the weight of ordinary courage, how it accumulates like snowfall. The weeks you carry your parent to appointments while your own life waits in a hallway. The mornings you wake into sadness and carry on without betraying yourself. The day you admit you are addicted to more than coffee and ask a stranger for guidance. The hour you apologize to a child because your anger outran your love. There is no anthem for this. There is the quiet. Sometimes the strongest person is the one who lets themselves be held. They open their chest to a sob the body has been guarding for years. They sit on a couch and say out loud things that rewrite their history in a key of truth. They allow a friend to see their face when the flattering angles fail. This is not the vulnerability that seeks applause, the curated, tearful post. This is the vulnerability that does not care if it is beautiful. It is the end of a war against one's own softness. It is the first sunrise after the long siege of pretending. Fear will argue. It will borrow the authority of your past to tell you that tenderness is a set of unlocked doors in a dangerous neighborhood. It will show you a montage of failures and betrayals. It will call it wisdom when it is simply a refusal to risk. Ask fear for specifics. Exact debt, not mood. Risk exists. Strength calculates and proceeds with eyes open. It does not turn fear into a doctrine. It does not outsource courage into fantasies. It does not confuse paranoia with strategy. It does not give the mic to the loudest memory. Then there is the strength to stay kind in a cruel room, the power to refuse the seduction of contempt. Contempt will offer you quick relief from pain, a relief like scratching a wound until it bleeds. It will make you feel superior for 15 minutes and smaller for months. The hard thing is to look at a person's worst act and say, that is part of you, not the whole of you, and to follow that sentence with boundaries instead of a sermon or a punch. Mercy is not permission. Mercy is the knowledge that human beings are not reducible to their worst day. To hold that line takes a ligament other virtues lean on. Love is a strength word, but we devalue it by making it a cloud. Love is not just a feeling. It is a decision to remain in right relationship when the feelings change weather. Loving a friend through depression is a form of endurance athletes do not train for. Loving someone who is dying is an apprenticeship in losing well. Loving a child through the years when they cannot love themselves is a kind of power that humbles every other. None of these strengths trend. They make a life possible. Forgiveness is one of the heaviest lifts. Not the cheap kind that erases harm to keep the peace. The real kind that names the wound precisely, tells the truth about the cost, and then refuses to build an identity out of grievance. It takes power to release the right to revenge and replace it with a boundary and a vow to keep your own hands clean. Forgiveness does not reconcile without repentance. It does not pretend. It is a way of refusing to let injury colonize your imagination. What you allow to live in you becomes your master. Strength chooses carefully what gets an address. Also consider the strength to change your mind publicly without turning yourself into a traitor. We worship consistency beyond reason because change embarrasses us. To say, I was wrong, and here's why, and here's what I will do differently, is to risk a social death. It is to accept the loss of a club whose dues are self-deception. The reward is alignment. The nervous system knows when you are lying. It hums with relief when you stop. Your sleep sweetens. Your humor returns. You can admit you're human and mean it. There is the strength to stay in a place where you are needed but not admired, in a discipline that outlasts mood, in a promise whose magic has been replaced by maintenance. And there is the strength to leave. A job whose prestige is eating your insides. A relationship whose love has become an alibi. A city where you outgrew your reflection. Both staying and leaving can be brave. What matters is whether you are obeying your deepest knowledge or your laziest reflex. We should talk about gentleness. It is the stealth form of power that animals trust before they know your name. True gentleness is not the performative softness that fears conflict. It is the strength of someone who could harm and chooses not to. You see it in the hands of a surgeon, in the tone of a teacher correcting without humiliating, in the way a friend tells you a truth that could have been a weapon, but arrives as an invitation. Gentleness requires a stable center. Without it, you flinch and call it kindness. And what of hope? Hope is not optimism. Optimism is a forecast. Hope is a discipline. It is choosing to invest your energy in a future you cannot guarantee, because to refuse to invest would make you someone you cannot respect. Hope is not cheery. Hope is stubborn. Witness the activist who fights a policy that will not budge for a decade. Witness the partner who attends another therapy session when cynicism would be much sexier. Witness your own decision to do the next right thing without a promise of applause. Hope's biceps are quiet and enormous. There is a concept in Japanese aesthetics, mono no aware, the tenderness toward things because they are passing. To feel this and not become morbid is strength. It calibrates your urgency. It lets you say, I love you, earlier, I'm sorry, faster, goodbye, more gracefully. It removes the poison from ambition without removing the spark. It tells you this. To be strong is not to outlast time. It is to be worthy of it. You do not have to be the biggest. You have to be faithful. The music here deepens because we are turning from advice to atmosphere. To be strong beyond physical power is to become a climate around those you love. The climate is not always sunny. It is honest weather. People enter your presence and find pressure normalizing, temperature stabilizing, humidity conducive to growth. They find space for their fear to speak without staging a coup. They find laughter near sorrow. They find a person who has been in rooms they don't want to describe, returned quieter, and now knows how to accompany without rescuing. Imagine the world if this definition took hold. The icons would change. The awards would be heavier and handed out in kitchens. The footage we replay would be moments of restraint, of reconciliation, of solitude inhabited well. The Hall of Fame would have a wing for those who refuse their own meanness at great cost. The anthem would be less catchy and more durable. The ratings would collapse for a time. Then slowly we would notice our own muscles responding to a diet of truth. We would stop feeding the monsters we pretend to fear. Tonight, try a small test. Before sleep, sit in the dark and ask your body where it is tired from pretending. The body is honest at night. If you listen, it will name the exact muscle, jaw, shoulders, heart that has been holding a posture labeled strong. Do not correct it. Thank it. Tell it the shift has begun. Real strength is not a pose. It is a practice of alignment, repeated in whispers until the hinge of your life creaks into a new position. Tomorrow, change one rep. Replace one performance with presence. In the meeting, say, "I need time to think," instead of producing certainty on demand. With the person you love, choose one sentence you have been avoiding and say it before you craft it perfectly. When anger knocks, count to 5, not to suppress it, but to ask it a question. What would you have me protect if you weren't holding the knife? Walk away from one argument that is actually an audition. Walk toward one chore that is actually an act of love. These are the micro-lifts that build the kind of strength that does not announce itself and cannot be taken away. Choose an arena where you have been brilliantly cruel to yourself and soften the coach. You don't have to turn into a puddle. Replace not good enough with learning. Replace weak with alive. Replace should with want, and verify the difference by action. The purpose is not to flatter. It is to calibrate. Harshness is a drug that ruins form. Form is everything. Without form, power is spill. With form, even a small effort travels far. Find your boundary and draw it a finger width thicker. If you are the person who never asks, ask. If you are the person who never stops, stop. If you are the person who never cries, cry where you are safe. If you are the person who fights everyone, practice laying down your sword when no one is attacking. If you are the person who forgives immediately, wait until you have stopped bleeding. Strength without boundary is martyrdom. Boundary without love is exile. We are learning the weight that fits our bones. When you fail, and you will, because this is human work, notice which voice tries to take the wheel. The critic will want the old script back. See, softness makes you weak. The cynic will suggest that nothing changes, that you are performing bravery for a camera that isn't there. Thank them both for their service. Give them jobs too small to do damage. Put the critic in charge of your spelling. Put the cynic on weather duty. Keep the helm for the part of you that is loyal to something you would die for, and more importantly, live for daily. Begin to curate your pantheon. Not the celebrities who glow and vanish, but the ordinary giants who have taught you this other kind of power. Maybe it's a janitor who spoke to you like a prince, a neighbor who rakes everyone's leaves, a mentor who told you the worst thing and stayed on the phone until silence felt kind. Keep their names in your pocket. When the old world tries to sell you it's strong again, consult your list. Ask what would they do if they weren't afraid of looking small. Then go and do that. We are leaving the age of spectacle. It does not know it yet. It will thrash and call your quiet betrayal. It will tempt you back with its shiny tournaments. It will tell you your softness is how empires fall. Smile and remember, every empire falls, loud or quiet. Your task is not to preserve the loud thing. Your task is to grow a life with a center. To become a person who can be relied upon when the grid flickers and the rumor mill foams and the distances feel unbridgeable. To become the kind of strength that doesn't need a story to be real. And if you are tempted to despise your desire for physical power, don't. Bodies are not the enemy. Muscles are good. Sweat is honest. Let the gym become a monastery where you practice better metaphors. Lift to learn form. Sprint to remember beginnings. Stretch to rehearse non-resistance. Rest to worship limits. Eat to honor the future. And when you finish, take your training with you into a room where no one will count your reps unless you quit. There, the old and new strengths shake hands and agree to keep you alive without making you a weapon. Hold this image. Water, a rock, a fern. The water moves relentlessly and soft. The rock admits shape over centuries and does not apologize. The fern unrolls again and again from its tight spiral into the same miracle open. If you become water, you will not have to win by breaking. If you become rock, you will not be reshaped by every mutter. If you become fern, you will keep unfolding until you die. This is a good trinity for a human. None of it trends. All of it lasts. The final test is intimate. Let someone you trust see you when you would rather be seen by everyone else. Let someone you love tell you, you are wrong, and feel your spine soften instead of spike. Let a stranger's need move you, and then take a breath and choose a response that does not deplete you into resentment. Let art rearrange you without insisting on an explanation. Let a child hand you a drawing of yourself and believe them. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.